Have you seen this viral meme about Denmark having a minimum wage of $25 per hour and a work week of only 35 hours per week? Sounds pretty good, right? Think again, sunshine. Even some Danes are unaware of what I'm going to share with you today. So buckle up, because the truth is much more intriguing and complex than the myth. Denmark actually has no minimum wage, and they're fighting the EU to keep it that way. So let's separate fact from fiction and start right now. Hi there, welcome to McDonald's. Well, thank you. But before I place my order, I just have to ask you about this meme that I saw on the internet. You must be very happy making $25 an hour with a 6-week vacation each year. Where can I sign up to work here? Here we go again. That's actually not true. I make a little more like $19 an hour, and I have 25 days off per year. How is that possible? Did something I read on the internet just turn out not to be true? Look, we have livable wages set by the Hotel and Restaurant Union. You see, it's not a fixed minimum wage, but rather negotiated through collective bargaining. That ensures fair compensation based on industry standards and living costs. But where do all these fantastic stories about the Danish way of life come from? From generations of Danish people fighting and making sacrifices for labor rights? So listen, the next time that you encounter that misleading meme, you can confidently say that yes, Denmark's approach to wages and benefits is not only fair, but it means to create a good work environment for everyone involved, even if it's a little more complex than can be summed up in a meme. Oh, and by the way, I don't take your order anymore because our staff is limited. With us getting paid more, we have to save some costs, so you can order at the machine over there. Huh? Oh, okay. Now let's delve into the complexities of Denmark's relationship with the European Union and their fight against the EU Minimum Wage Directive. In a recent development, the Danish government has signaled its intent to take the European Union to court. They're aiming to reverse a directive on minimum wage. This move is outlined in the three-party coalition agreement, underlining a fundamental disagreement with the EU's approach to setting minimum wages. Denmark, along with Sweden, stand in opposition to this EU directive, citing the unique labor models that exist in both countries. As we already discussed, wages in Denmark are traditionally negotiated between labor market parties, namely trade unions, and employers. The fear is that the EU directive could disrupt this already established system and potentially harm the 70% of Danish people that operate under union contracts. The EU Commission has assured that Denmark won't be compelled to legislate a minimum wage, respecting the country's existing model. However, the Danish government is adamant about completely removing the directive, expressing concerns about the EU's influence on wage negotiations in the future. The Employment Minister of Denmark explains, regardless of the immediate consequences, it's a slippery slope when the EU mandates directives on wages. The government aims to nullify the directive on the grounds that it doesn't align with the EU treaty. Trade unions and the left-wing party Red Green Alliance have voiced support for Denmark's legal action, advocating for the preservation of their unique labor models. However, experts caution that while it may be a legal victory, it could have significant political ramifications. So as Denmark takes its stance against the EU Minimum Wage Directive, the implications reach beyond legalities into the web of European politics. The question remains whether this fight will be a triumph or a setback for Denmark in the bigger European landscape. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the best restaurant in the world several times over, as seen on Netflix. Thank you. I've heard so much about this place. You know, there's this meme that somebody sent me about all these Danish workers making a fortune. Is that true? The infamous meme about working in Denmark. Look, we don't have a government set minimum wage. Our wages are set by collective agreements within the hotel and restaurant sector. Really? How does that work? Well, we're governed by agreements negotiated between employers and employees represented by trade unions. But it's not as simple as that sounds. The system has its merits, but it also has some drawbacks. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but since you don't work for the New York Times, some of the people at this restaurant actually don't get paid at all. Without a set minimum, 30 of our 64 cooks are unpaid, even though we charge guests the price of Copenhagen rent for their meals, and a lot of people in this country couldn't even afford to eat here. Basically, wages can vary widely across different jobs and restaurants in Denmark. The best restaurants on your CV may be worth your unpaid labor and long hours, but of course, not everyone can afford that kind of experience, and a lot of people feel that that exploits the system. That seems challenging. What about job security and benefits? Yeah, Another drawback for some people is the uncertainty around job security. As I mentioned, without a standardized minimum wage, some workers might face employment with poor wages and working conditions. If your employer hasn't entered into such an agreement, you still have a lot of rights as somebody who's working in Denmark, but the responsibility falls on you to know what those rights are and to assert them if needed. As there are trade-offs with any system, it's more complex than a meme to ensure that everyone gets a fair deal when working here. In a significant move towards fair labor practices, the European Parliament has taken a decisive step to ban unpaid internships across the European Union. The Quality Trainee Report aims to address the exploitation of trainees by setting a minimum quality standard and ensuring adequate compensation for their work. The Parliament emphasizes that traineeships should cover at least the very basic living necessities, such as food, housing, and transportation, tailoring that compensation to the cost of living in each member state. This vote is seen as a crucial advancement to open up opportunities for young people from diverse backgrounds that are entering the labor market. A board member of the European Youth Forum emphasizes the importance of this vote, stating that the European Commission cannot betray young people now. It's time for binding legislation that will ban unpaid internships for good. The aim is to eliminate the financial burden on young people, as research has shown that unpaid internships cost an average of over €1,000 per month, which pushes some people to live on what researchers dub a ramen noodles only budget. Beyond the financial strain, the practice deepens inequality, threatens mental health, and distorts the labor market. The board member underlines the need for fair wages and workplace rights, asserting that the Parliament's vote reflects the desire of European citizens to put an end to unpaid work. Additionally, the report encourages EU member states to make traineeships more accessible, especially for persons with disabilities and those from vulnerable backgrounds, while promoting cross-border traineeships. So Denmark's work scene is a mix of no set minimum wage, strong unions, and ongoing debates about the future of wages. From McDonald's to high-end restaurants, wages are a negotiation. Meanwhile, across the EU, the talk is about banning unpaid internships for fair pay and better opportunities. Denmark's fight against an EU minimum wage directive adds a twist, showing the challenge of keeping their way of life while being a part of Europe. It's a complex story that will undoubtedly become more interesting in the long term. We definitely will come back to this topic. As has been mentioned, the current Danish system has evolved over generations of fight and sacrifice. Labor disputes aren't easily won, and the current model didn't just spring up from nowhere. For example, McDonald's learned this the hard way when it entered the Danish labor market in the 1980s. They tried to skirt union rules, and this video right here will tell you all about it and may seem familiar to what Tesla is experiencing today in both Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Check out this video right here, and thanks for watching today, everybody. Hi.